This is from Page with Njideka Maduka, bringing clarity to the headlines, one page at a time.
That's the way we do it, one page at a time. It's Friday, July 11, 2025. And of course, this is the front page. My name is Njideka Maduka. For some people, a day like this, that is when the weekend starts for them. Or some people will have to wait until Saturday, Sunday. People who look forward to the weekend, I want to say they're really enjoying, because not everybody falls into that category. In fact, for some people, their work actually increases at the weekend. That's the irony of life. But regardless of when your weekend is starting, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, make sure you enjoy it. But before you get into the mood, let's hit you with the front pages, shall we?
This is from Page with Njideka Maduka, bringing clarity to the headlines, one page at a time.
What do we have here? We have the Pilot, we have the Punch, we have the Vanguard, right? The Pilot is piloting us this morning. First with this story on the front page, wraps the probe alleged fund diversion, irregularities in students' loan scheme. Refs probe alleged fund diversion, irregularities in students' loan scheme. The lead here says the House of Representatives yesterday launched an investigation into alleged fund diversions, non-compliance, and unethical practices in the disbursements of the student loan scheme, warning that such issues could derail one of the country's most significant education interventions. I do agree, it's one of the country's most significant education interventions. Especially when you look at what the students stand to benefit from it. At a time when the economy is not smiling on anybody, I think anybody who has that privilege to receive government's initiatives like this, I'm sure will be very happy, will really be appreciative of it. But it's really sad, because sometimes some of these things end up in unnecessary controversy. I've always wondered, why do things end up in controversy in this country? Why? Why can't works be done without allegations of possible diversions or anyhowness? I just don't get it. But this is what is, for now, presumably happening with the students' loan. And it's really sad, because it's coming a year after the president signed the Student Loan Scheme Act. Right, it took off completely last year. That was after an amendment to it. But look at the stories we're getting. Also, the House of Representatives is trying to look into some of the anomalies, whether it's delayed disbursements, a lack of transparency, and possible collusion among key stakeholders. When it comes to this delay, there was a report I cited sometime where a student was actually acknowledging the fact that disbursement sometimes is delayed because he had an experience where he had already graduated and he received his alert for loan disbursements, right? He didn't get it when he was in school. It was after he left school he was able to get it. And you ask the question, how could this have happened? Recently, a student from Nnamdi Azikiwe University actually had calls to reach out to the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, that's the ICPC, on social media, saying that they applied for the loan, but their upkeep has not been given to them for the past 8 months. That's the allowance they're supposed to use and feed and do some little errands. And you ask the question, why? What's causing the delay? It's not just about what appears to be some administrative lapses. In some cases, you have an inkling that there could be a case of corruption. Remember, not too long ago, the ICPC and of course the National Orientation Agency had calls to come out to insinuate that the universities or tertiary institutions may not really be transparent when it comes to disbursement of the loan, even though ICPC on their own came out to say there was a mix-up of some sort, right? What they had intended to convey was not what was conveyed. But for the National Orientation Agency, they said some universities were actually not letting the students know that their monies had been given to them or disbursed to them. In some cases, about 5,000 naira to 35,000 naira were usually deducted from the fund, from the student loan. I asked the question, why? Why all of these losses? Is it coming from the institutions? Is it coming from the government agencies? Is it coming from the students? Do we have enough personnel to process the applications? Do we have enough technology? Or is it a case of pure anyhowness? You know how we do it in this country: you rub my shoulder, I rub your shoulder; you rub my back, I rub your back. You know, somebody just sitting behind the desk and waiting for you to give him or her a share of whatever. So we hope on the House of Representatives to do justice to this, and I hope that they can get to the roots of the matter. It doesn't end up in uncertainty. You know, sometimes when these investigations are carried out, nobody's prosecuted. We don't get to hear the end of it. Remember recently, the Minister of FCT, Nyesom Wike, had to come out to challenge President Bola Tinubu to release the report of the investigations done on the NDDC, almost pleading with the president because he was trying to insinuate that certain interests were being protected. And so these are investigations end up in the country. And I'm hoping that the House of Representatives is not just doing this just to get attention. Remember, there was a time they investigated job racketeering. Where did it end up? Was anybody prosecuted? So you don't raise the hope of Nigerians, but at the end of the day, nothing gets done, nothing gets achieved. But is this coming at the right time? I think it's coming at the right time. Just within 1 year. It's different from some investigations that would happen years after everything had happened. You begin to wonder, okay, what's the need for this investigation? So we're hoping that a good job will be done on this because the students need it. And we're talking about human capital development, and surely anybody who is sitting on the student fund needs to be taken out, just so you don't jeopardize the human capital vision of the federal government. But leaving that story on the pilots, you have this one, has to do with security matters. 22 suspected killers of wedding travelers arraigned in Jos. 22 suspected killers of wedding travelers arraigned in Jos. Well, the Plateau State Police Command yesterday arraigned 22 suspected killers of wedding travelers who were reportedly killed in Mango community of Mango local government area of Plateau State. Remember that story? It happened sometime in June. These travelers, they were going for a wedding from Kaduna to Jos. When they got to Mango, they were actually waylaid by what was identified as a mob. The story had it that they missed their way and they took that particular road where they met the mob. The mob was in a tense mood, apparently. And Plateau State has been bedeviled with insecurity. So apparently this was one of those cases where there were some sort of clashes and the wedding travelers ran into the clash and became victims, of which they didn't bargain. Sad stuff. Yesterday in court, we were learning that the defendants actually pleaded that two of the suspects were underage and they shouldn't take their plea. And the court had to shift hearing to Friday so that a new plea can be made, an amendment to the plea can be made, and those people deserving of taking their plea can take their plea. It's just unfortunate. Anybody can become a victim in this country, and that happens when authorities do not do what they're supposed to do. But the Vanguard this morning is leading with political story on the front page. 2027, ADC will dislodge Tinubu, APC, Aregbesola. 2027, ADC will dislodge Tinubu, APC, Aregbesola. That's the interim secretary of the African Democratic Congress, the new bride, ADC. Former Minister of Interior, talking about Rauf Aregbesola. He was at a meeting in Ondo State to rally round stakeholders, when it comes to membership of the ADC. And of course, he said, unity. That's all the ADC needs. And you know what they say about unity? They say unity is strength. And of course, I think the only way to start with this unity is for them all to achieve this unity, is for them to reach out to aggrieved members of the ADC, those who think that they have been displaced from the party unjustly. Remember, people like Patriku Dumebi have been crying foul. Some people have pointed out when it comes to leadership change, saying the person who handed over is not the real leader. Some people think that the constitution was breached in terms of the people who are supposed to take over the leadership, whether they met the requirements, including the requirements of coming from the same zone as those who were outgone, the requirement of being members of the National Executive Committee of the party for 2 years before they are allowed, And so all of these things we have to be taken care of. I don't know if it will be hard for the leadership to do that, or if that's what Aregbesola is already doing, but that needs to be done to rally the support. This is not the time to front and say, well, we met all of the constitutional requirements or the legal requirements, and then everything ends up in court. And sometimes these court cases can be quite unending. And what it does is to jeopardize the chances of party members or aspirants who are interested in vying for political positions in the party, right? But beyond that, in terms of unity as well, they will have to unite on who they should support to represent them when it comes to presidency, right? The presidency, I think this is what is being eyed the most. All other positions can for now not be of so much interest, because once you get the presidency, you know how people defect. They can decide to defect and nobody will have qualms about it. But beyond that, I think what should also be of concern is the defections that have been happening in the southern part of the country, from the PDP to the ADC. And so PDP has lost Delta State, it has lost Akwa Ibom State, it has lost to Edo State. So if the coalition was eyeing the state, it will have to do more. It has to look elsewhere, not just looking elsewhere, but ensuring that members of other parties in those states it is eyeing do not actually defect, but rather defect to the coalition, basically. And it goes to show that all of the strongholds that the PDP had in 2023, the Labour Party had under in 2023, are threatened unless the people rise above the incumbency factor and decide to make their votes count. Now, leaving that story, this visa war is still very much serious. On the front page of the Vanguard, visa war, FG explains stance as US slams tighter measures. Visa war, FG explains stance as US slams tighter measures. Well, the federal government yesterday denied stopping the issuance of the 5-year non-immigrant multiple entry visa for United States of America citizens, a policy the US cited as reason for the latest visa restrictions against Nigerians. Well, we talked about it the other time, the US slamming us with visa restrictions, not just us, but other countries, but basically part of the reasons being reciprocity and security. When the news broke out, some people were trying to interpret it in a way that insinuated that the reciprocity may not necessarily be about the validity of our own visa when it comes to the US citizens, but more to do with other requirements that were not met by Nigeria as far as visa issuance is concerned. Not only that, the Foreign Affairs Ministry came out to say that the country has not done anything to warrant this kind of policy, at least not in recent time. But for me, it's not just a matter of it's not in recent time. What is the country's current policy when it comes to visa issuance for non-immigrant US citizens? I said reciprocity has to do with do me, I do you. And I had to go to the immigration portal. And what I saw there was 3 months validity for non-immigrant visas like business persons and of course tourists. And I asked the question, is this where the reciprocity is coming from? Now, Bayo Onanuga, who is the media aide to the president, came out to say that when it comes to non-immigrant visas, the validity period for US citizens is still 5 years, right? 5 years. That is 3 months visa validity that the US possibly is referring to has to do with people on short stay who are business persons and of course tourists. That this category of visa applicants used to apply for visa under visa on arrival. Now it has now been changed to e-visa. But the thing is, there are still non-immigrant applicants who apply for non-immigrant visas, which include business and tourism. And so if business and tourism is regarded as non-immigrant visas, and Nigeria is claiming that non-immigrant visas issued to US citizens is valid for 5 years, how come the one of 3 month single entry validity is still known as non-immigrant visas? Does Nigeria have 2 categories of non-immigrant visas? Because that's what it's looking like here. So you have the one that is issued online, of which when you're issued online, little processing is what you need to do when you arrive. Then you have another one of 5 years. If that is the case, then we need to explain to the US government, because apparently the US government is categorizing everything as one. Non-immigrant visa is non-immigrant visa. Both of us used to have common understanding. It used to be 5 years or 2 years, but now maybe they learned that there is a non-immigrant visa for US citizens issued by Nigerians that is just 3 months single entry. The communication may be a problem, or maybe somebody is not really understanding the other party here. But what the US said when they issued the statement is the fact that non-immigrant visa policy can be reviewed. And so this clarification will have to be made. If it's made, I believe the decision will have to be rescinded, and they will have to form a common front. But under this story as well, you have another visa policy here where the US has slammed $250 visa integrity fee on tourist students, workers. I mean, it's really, really raining for those who are interested in US visa application. Students, tourists, workers, the non-immigrants. $250 visa integrity fee. Basically, you're going to be paying this fee to ensure the integrity of your visa, which lies on you using your visa as you should. You come in when you're supposed to come, you go when you're supposed to go. You do the things you're supposed to do with that visa. Otherwise, you'll be forfeiting this amount. Basically, that's what this fee is all about. I think it's really raining for Nigerians across the world when it comes to visa restrictions. Remember the other time, the UAE even came out to say you have to have, if you're 45 years and above, you have to have like $10,000 in your account each month for the past 6 months. When you do the mathematics, the conversion rates, that's like 15 million. A country is telling you, if you're 45 and above, you're coming into this country, you have to have like 15 million in your account each month for the past 6 months. Okay. Not only that, if you fall between the age of, I think, 15 and 45, or 18 and 45, you have to come with somebody. These are restrictions slammed on citizens of Nigeria. And what does this say? What does this mean for us? We have to fix home, basically. We have to fix home. You cannot put your future, make your future reliant on the policies of other countries. It doesn't really make sense. So you either fix home or you don't. And your citizens will keep being subjected to some of these strict requirements before they're being allowed to enter into a country. But leaving that story on the Vanguard, we have the Punch. Punch newspaper on the front page. Autonomy Standoff. Governors get 4.5 trillion naira LG funds 1 year after Supreme Court ruling. Autonomy Standoff. Governors get 4.5 trillion naira local government funds 1 year after Supreme Court ruling. Basically, the governors are still getting the funds despite the fact that the Supreme Court said the money should be deposited directly into the accounts of local government. I know one thing about the country. When it comes to certain things like this, all you're going to be hearing is blame games. Okay? Why it's not being abided by. Sometimes you hear, the CBN is demanding something quite steep from us, asking for audited accounts. People like Falana is saying, if CBN is demanding for audited accounts, how can local government provide that when they are not been in charge of the funds? Other times you hear something like, well, we don't know if the local government had conducted a local government election. Different reasons. And sometimes blame games flying left, right and center. But that's not what this is supposed to solve. It is supposed to gear us towards local government developments. 1 year after, we're still where we are, unfortunately. I also think personally that the loose ends should be tightened when it comes to the law. The Supreme Court gave judgment, of which I think was controversial, because the law provides that the funds should be managed by the state government through the joint account, right? When the Supreme Court gave this ruling, some people were jubilating, saying that that's what has been provided for. The court insinuated that the intention of the Constitution is for the local government to be autonomous. But when you look at the Constitution itself, there is no clarity, there is no direct injunction of financial autonomy, because what you should have is a joint account. But the Supreme Court gave the impression that everything is clearly spelled out. But if everything is clearly spelled out in the Constitution, how come the federal government is having problem disbursing funds to the local government? And that's because there is no provision for them to be autonomous financially. Right now, you have a situation where a lot is being demanded from them before they can access that fund. Isn't it ironic? Right? Sometimes if a foundation is wrong, it's wrong, no matter how you try to paint it. And that's why we are facing all of these lapses. For me, it's not even about CBN or all of those things. It's because certain things have not been taken care of, or some things were being thwarted on the author of interpretation. So the Constitution will need to be amended fast. This is even as we hear that certain governors are actually threatening local government councils not to open any account to the CBN. There are reports that have emerged in that direction. Is that possibly what is also leading to the delay in opening an account? How is federal government handling this? Is federal government hearing it? Is it looking into it? But above all, I think we have to hasten up if we want to amend the Constitution to clearly spell out that local government funds should be managed by them and not jointly by the state government. Otherwise, there are various pretexts that can be used to delay this disbursement of funds, and will continuously cry for development at the local government level. Alright, we're going to call it a day here on the front page with me, Njideka Maduka. Don't forget, let us know what you think when it comes to some of these headlines on our front pages. Which of them touches you the most? Which of them are you concerned about? Let's keep the conversation going. Don't forget, you can follow me on my social media handles. Follow me on Facebook. Search for Njideka Maduka on air or Njideka Maduka. You can also visit linktree.ee/Njideka Maduka. This is where you get all my platforms. Facebook, Spreaker, Instagram, and all of them. Join me next time, okay, where we'll come making sense of the headlines, bringing clarity to them one page at a time. Have a lovely and fantastic weekend.